Hello, this is Bill, and we're going to be talking about some analog sound effects. Some of the earliest guitar sound effects that came out were all echoes and reverbs, which is a logical sound effect, try to create more space. And we're going to discuss all the three types of true analog reverb and echo effects, starting with the spring reverb tanks. If you've never seen one before, basically this is the inside of a spring reverb tank. You'll find them in a majority of amplifiers. As you can see, based on the size of my hand, this thing is pretty darn big. I got a little amplifier here. This is a 10-inch speaker amplifier, and you can get an idea of how big it is. But essentially, this was actually developed for organs. Obviously, organs generally had that big, giant, churchy sound, and they wanted to obtain that in a smaller space. These were sold for Hammond and many other companies. Basically, the technology, the most famous is the Accutronics. This is actually a Belton, which Accutronics and Belton are the same company now. Accu-Bell, I think they're calling them. But the technology isn't that tricky. It's basically they have an input here, which will put a high voltage signal into basically a miniature motor that will actually move these springs, and these springs will get to jangling around, and then the sound is picked up on the other side by the pickup mechanism. It turns it back into energy, and then they'll blend that sound in with the instrument sound. These initially, like I say, were developed for organs, but they've become extremely popular with guitarists, and being one of the earliest technologies, this has sort of become synonymous with the surf guitar sound. Most of your guitar amplifiers, if they're a tube, probably have one of these tanks in here, possibly not this large, and the larger tanks and the bigger amps tend to be the most popular and arguably the best sounding. But this spring technology has actually even made its way into the home stereo market. In the 70s, Pioneer actually offered it as an add-on to your home receiver. Really, really cool. So we'll make a little bit of noise. We'll show you how the spring units work, and I'll set it up and we'll be right back. Okay, the amplifier we're going to be using for this is just a 60s Gibson Skylark. This is early 60s, probably 62, 63. It does have a tremolo on it, but other than that, tremolo is off. The sound is completely and totally stone dry. There's no echo, reverb, or anything to it. So now we will hook up the spring, and it'll be really quick to see the difference in space and sound. Okay, I've got the unit hooked up now. This is the Guyatone FR3000V. It's a tube-driven, entirely spring, completely analog unit. Very much, Fender in the 60s made a series of these spring tanks, and there's a lot of interesting spring units you can still buy, primarily on the boutique market. If you can see, this spring reverb tank is obviously very large. It has that same large-sized reverb tank I showed you out of the unit, and this is extremely configurable. There are knobs for everything from how hard you drive the springs, how much treble and bass you're listening to off of the springs, the volume that you're actually listening to the springs back at. There's a master volume and a couple other things on this, so it makes it an extremely versatile reverb. You can do a lot of neat stuff with it, and immediately I think you'll pick up on the reverberation sound coming off of those springs. It's a very distinct sound that you've probably heard many times on many recordings. Very, very popular. If we compare that sound to the original extremely dry sound of the amplifier, you can obviously tell the reverb tank is working. It used to be really popular in surf music to turn the spring up very, very high and really drive it, and then you can get that fun little that sort of chink sound on every note there. You know, you hear that kind of thing and get that extreme, extra reverberating sound. And these are extremely configurable, wonderful units, great to have in your collection. And if you own any really good vintage amps, like maybe a Fender Bassman 50 watt, Fender Bassman, like from the 60s, an old blackface, they didn't have the reverbs, and these things work phenomenal for those. I mean, just great sound. The other really cool thing that this unit has, and I'll show you in just a second, there is one feature that's unique to the Guyatone. And it's a switch on the back, and when you turn it on, it actually takes out the original sound of your guitar entirely and replaces it entirely with the sound coming off the springs. So we'll hear just the sound of the springs, and it really sounds like I'm playing back in a big cement pipe or something. Very, very trebly, and again, normally it's nice to mix the dry sound of your guitar with it, but to use as like a studio effect, if you wanted to put a spring on a vocal or something, you could record just the sound of the spring and then balance it after the fact. So just a really cool unit, lots of various spring reverbs, but one of the first echo reverb effects created entirely analog, no digital, no recording, no electronics beyond old school tube technology, and still in production today. Such a great unit. They're still producing these available, and the durability of them was great. I mean, they hold up. You just got to take care of your tubes like you would any amp. So I'll be back with section 2, and I'll show you the technology that came next after the spring. And it's a pretty rare one, so you might not have seen one.